25. So, short message, I think now. Okay, so yes, it is absolutely. Yeah, right. My message this morning is prayer makes things happen. I don't know if you believe that or not. Your experience that when you pray, things happen. Certainly, it's been our experience, and as Drew's already said, we've already shared some miracles about what God has been doing. And thank you so much for inviting us. It's a privilege to be here. This place has got so many memories for me, coming here every Wednesday and seeing so many of you there and seeing you again this morning. It's so lovely to see you. And so what have we been doing for the last 2 years? Drew shared a little bit that we came back. We thought we were going to settle in the UK, but we felt increasingly that God was leading us back. But when I first came back, I met up with a Chinese businessman called Kim and his wife Julia, and they've been supporting us in Thailand. And Kim was at a stage in his life when he decided that he would sell his business. So he sold his business and he said, Rob, I'm in a position now where I'm not sure what the future holds. He said, could we look together to pray together about me and about what your future holds? And I said, that'd be brilliant. Friday morning, we meet up. So we did. After a few weeks of praying together, I suggested we did the Momentum Yes course, which is a course about mission. And we looked about how God has a plan for all the nations. And we looked at countries that were in darkness. Now God has poured out his spirit on those countries and they come to life. And we were getting quite excited about what God was doing in the world. And he said, you know, Rob, I think perhaps God is moving me back to China, to Hong Kong, where I work with Jackie Pullinger. I said, that would be amazing. I said, but you know, if he doesn't, God is bringing the people to this country as well. We can actually reach out to people in this country. And he said, and I said, when they reach out to people in this country, they then text their and WhatsApp their relatives in their home country, and they said, I found Jesus. Perhaps you'd like to know Jesus as well. And you could spread the word from this country. We can all do that, can't we? And I said, in actual fact, God has put on our heart, Drew and I, recently, to join a group called Neighbours Worldwide. And they are based in the UK, and they actually reached out to people from other countries who come to this country. And a ministry has really blossomed in the UK. And I know that Helen and Jane are reaching out to the Farsi speakers in Ealing and seeing a tremendous ministry there. God is at work in this country. So as we looked at that together, I said to him, you know, I need to find some support as well as living in the UK, because I need to find a job. And I said, do you know of anywhere I could work that there are Asians, because we come back from Thailand, working, and I couldn't get alongside and perhaps work with them? And he said, come and work in my shop. I said, what do you mean? I thought you sold your business. He said, no, I sold my warehouse, but I've still got my Asian shop in Clifton Road. Now, Clifton Road, if any of you know, is the same road as the church, Clifton Community Church. And I said, whoa, that would be amazing. I said, well, what would I do? He said, well, you'll be an evangelist in my shop. I said, I'll pay you. And when people come in, you talk to them about Jesus. I said, yeah, I've got to work as well. He said, no, you didn't have to work. I said, well, I think I'd like to work because obviously it would be important, you know, to do the job. So I was in the shop and I was cutting up vegetables and trying to prove to my co-workers that I actually was doing a job as well. And they didn't quite understand me what I was doing, talking to these people all the time. But over the time that we were there, we did see a tremendous amount of fruit. Two Japanese girls walked in. I invited them to an international evening. Fruit as well, thank you. Got that one. We saw a Chinese family come into the shop who hadn't got a church. I introduced them to Clifton Community Church and they started coming. I started English classes up the road. We got 20 to 25 students. We ran international evenings together. Kim was a great help. We did a barbecue one day and he took his van. He has a 12-seater van, and we put two Muslim families in the van, which was like 6 children. One family had 5 children and the other one had 2, so 7 children altogether. And we drove them all to the Goring Gap, and we had a massive barbecue. We had over 100 people there cooking halal meat as well. It was quite an interesting time. But through that talking together and praying together, things changed. And all of a sudden, we got involved in ministry together, which we never thought we would do. And his ministry is still carrying on in Worthing. I'd like us to look, if we can, at, briefly now, at Acts chapter 12, verses 1 to 18. And it's the story of prayer, and then things happen. You know it very well. I'm going to go through it verse by verse, but let's begin. About that time, King Herod Agrippa began to persecute some believers in the church. He had the apostle James, John's brother, killed with a sword. When Herod saw how much this pleased the Jewish people, he also arrested Peter. This took place during the Passover celebration. Then he imprisoned him, placed him under the guard of 4 squads of 4 soldiers each. Herod intended to bring Peter out for public trial after the Passover. But while Peter was in prison, the church prayed very earnestly for him. There's a but there, isn't there? The church prayed. We'll come back to that later. So I remember to skip a few things here. But. The word but means there's going to be a change. And I've been thinking about the story of James O. Fraser. Anyone read the story Mountain Rain? Yeah, an amazing story of work of James O. Fraser amongst the Leesu tribe. At the age of 22 in 1886, he left England to join the Leesu people. And for 6 years, he saw nothing, no fruit at all. He actually invented the alphabet for the Leesu people. When we were in Thailand once, I went up into the Leesu tribe and did a children's outreach there. And after the children's outreach, one of the men, the Leesu men, stood up and started writing letters on the wall. And I said, oh, those letters look a bit like an alphabet upside down. I said, what is that? He said, it's called the Fraser script. Amazing. And then I linked it and I went, oh, did he actually write that? And he actually wrote it. He was the first person to write. James O. Fraser was the first person to write the Leesu language. For 6 years, he labored without seeing any fruit. He battled with depression, almost to suicide at times. Saw nothing. And then he got a revelation. He got a revelation that it was a spiritual battle, and he got a revelation that it needed God to intervene, and he got a revelation that he needed to get people to pray. So he asked people to pray. He asked his mother to pray, and his mother gathered together, 6, I think it was, or maybe more, ladies in the church to gather to pray. And he said this, I'm not just asking you to give help in prayer as a sort of sideline, but I'm trying to roll the main responsibility of this prayer warfare to you. It wasn't prayer would help, this is the main work. You pray and we see what happens. This group took up the challenge and breakthrough happened within months of earnest prayer. This is what we just heard there. Earnest prayer. Constant. Earnest means constant. Not giving up. Persevering prayer. The floodgate opened and the 129 families representing about 600 Leesu came to Christ. Today, 80% of the Leesu population of over 900,000 people are Christians. It's the highest amount in the tribe in around Thailand. Isn't that amazing? One man and these women that prayed, he put it down to that. Wonderful things that happen. A wonderful privilege to take the good news, isn't it? To Asia and other parts of the world. I know Graham Davis has been doing this for many years. I'm sure others have done it as well. I don't know who they are in this room, but I'm sure they have. But I would encourage you to go. We already had it this morning, the call to go. Did you hear that? Call to stay, but also a call to go. And I would encourage you at any opportunity, at any age, to go. You know, we encouraged our children to take a gap year. We felt it would be really good for them to get involved in some sort of ministry before they go to university. Joshua, who's now 29, he went to Tasmania and worked at the WEP Training College and had a great opportunity of practical work, but also learnt a lot from the missionaries there and really built his faith. Lily Meyer, she joined Operation Mobilization. She went on the Lagos Hope. We had an amazing time of ministry in evangelizing and doing practical work. She was cleaning the toilets on the ship. That was her job. She was called an angel. That's what they called them. Cleaning the bathroom and the toilet. But she also got involved in relief work. She also got involved in community work. And her faith has soared. She wants to do mission at some point again in her life. And Joseph, I'll tell a story about Joseph later, but Joseph, he went to Hebron in India where Mike and Pam Bates were. And he was an international guest there. He had a fantastic time. He was doing drama and he worked with the kids in the dorm. And he went back. He was there for 6 months, but he went back to, he got an invitation to South Korea last summer, and he went and taught drama and English in South Korea. And again, he's doing acting in Ealing in the University of West London, but he wants to use that for mission over in this country or overseas. So, but this is a result of their gap year. This is a result of them going. Such an opportunity there are these days right now with organizations such as WEF, OMS, YWAM, Avail. They all allow young people to go on these trips. You might want to go. There's still opportunities to go now, or you might want, well, there's a mission field out here. Like I said, Neighbours Worldwide, our mission with WEF. Come and see me if you're interested in doing something with them. They are reaching out to people locally who've come in from overseas. And if you can't do that, then it's not a sideline. This is the main thing. You pray. And I'm sure Graham, when he goes, prayer is the most important thing, Graham, isn't it? You say in your letters, please pray for me. And we'd love you to pray for us as well. We've got a newsletter at the back. If you want to sign up and hear our news, then you can pray for us. But prayer, as James O'Fraser said, is not the sideline, it's the main work. So I'd encourage you to get involved. And I'm sure many of you are involved already, but just for those of you who are not. Prayer makes things happen, doesn't it? Let's read verses 6 to 7. The night before Peter was to be placed on trial, he was asleep, fastened with 2 chains between 2 soldiers. Others stood guard at the prison gate. Suddenly there was a bright light in the cell, and an angel of the Lord stood before Peter. The angel struck him on the side to awaken him and said, "Quick, get up." And the chains fell off his wrists. Then the angel told him, "Get dressed and put on your sandals." And he did. "Now put on your coat and follow me," the angel ordered. So Peter left the cell, following the angel. But all the time he thought, it was a vision. He didn't realize it was actually happening. They passed the first and the second guard post, and they came to the iron gate leading to the city. And this opened to them all by itself. So they passed through and started walking down the street. And then the angel suddenly left him. What an amazing miracle. You know, I preached this once in a church in Worthing many, many years ago. And an amazing guy came up to me afterwards and said, "Rob, these kind of things don't happen in the Christian life anymore, do they?" And it was at the time when Brother Ewan's book was out. And I said, "Read this, Heavenly Man." He said, "It's in there. There's a replica story. There's a mirror story. How Brother Ewan went past the guards and they looked through him," he said, as if he wasn't there. Incredible. Miracles happen. Drew's already said that, the miracle of adoption. Do you believe in miracles? Let me tell you one short miracle. When we were in Thailand, we were working. Part of our work was teaching English, as Sue says, not this time, the time before. And we set up a language school. And we taught English from kids right to adults. But during the term break, because I love evangelism, I said, let's go to the schools and teach English in the schools. Also tell them about the Jesus story, tell them about Christmas. So we took puppets and we went to probably about 15 or 20 schools during those 2 years. We'd take a team in, they would do the puppet show, they would tell the story as it was. I would teach a little bit of English about Christmas. And then we'd give every child an invitation, a booklet. And in the booklet was like a cartoon booklet from the Good News team in Bangkok. And at the back of it was a chance to do a correspondence course. Now, we gave out at least 10,000 of those magazine kids over the time we were there. The Good News team said 10% of the kids that get those leaflets will do the correspondence course. So that's, do the math. I can't do it on my feet. But that's quite a lot of kids who did the correspondence course. Many of those gave their lives to Jesus and they wrote into the letters, wrote into the group. So the gospel was being spread, but in a fun way. We loved it. But the gospel was being spread. And then one day we took our team in my car. We were driving to another compassion project. It wasn't a Christmas one. Um, and as we were driving along, we drove along this road and there was bush on either side. And I just had the car straight and I was kind of turning around half talking to the Thai team with me in the car. I had puppets in the back, I had PA equipment in the back. And then suddenly one of the team said, Arjan, teacher in Thai, she said, the car's on fire. And I looked and there was smoke coming out my steering wheel. And I thought, whoa. So I jammed the brakes on. Then it started coming out of the boot and I flipped the boot so it would fly open. The bonnet would fly open. And I said, everyone out the car. And I got out of the car and I thought, that's the end of my car and all the puppets and everything else. But you know what? Standing by the side of the road was a man dressed in a white shirt and a black tie with a toolkit in his hand. I think it was a bus stop. I can't recall, but there was another lady standing next to him. He quickly picked up his tools, went to the car, opened up the bonnet, disconnected the battery, and the fire went out. And we went, oh, it's interesting. So we rang my friend, who was another one of the teams, the Thai lady's husband, who had a car, which I'd sold to him a few years ago. And he drove the car to us. We unloaded all the puppets and all the PA equipment into his truck. I got in the truck, started to drive off to the event. He drove my car to be repaired. And as we were driving along, we went, what just happened? What just happened? And we realized a miracle had happened because men who carry tools do not wear white shirts and black ties. There was no other people on that road apart from that man and that woman standing there. That was when the fire happened. That's when we stopped the car. That man was able to save the vehicle with all the puppets, and the puppets were worth about £400 or £500, and the PA equipment was worth a lot of money. We would never have been able to replace them. But God knew, and he put that man at the right time. Was that man an angel? I think he might have been. That was a miracle that happened to us. Verse 12. Oh. Did I get up to verse 12? I don't remember. 11, thank you. Peter finally came to his senses. It's really true, he said. The Lord has sent his angel and saved me from Herod and from what the Jewish leaders have planned to do to me. When he realized this, he went to the home of Mary, the mother of John Mark, where many were gathered for prayer. He knocked at the door in the gate, and a servant girl named Rhoda came to open it. When she recognized Peter's voice, she was so overjoyed that instead of opening the door, she ran back inside and told everyone, Peter's standing at the door. You're out of your mind, they said. When she insisted, they decided it must be his angel. How funny, isn't it? It's a comical thing, isn't it? Peter's got out of the prison in a daze. Oh, how can I go and find my church now? He knocks on the door. Woman opens the door, doesn't even let him in, runs back to the prayer meeting and says, you've been praying for Peter, and he's outside. They go, don't you say he was praying? Prayer. I don't expect an answer. We're praying. You know, I wonder what that prayer meeting was like. Do you think people were desperately praying? I reckon they were praying, hey, Peter! Because if you'd read in the Acts of the Apostles, just before that incident, James was taken and he was killed in prison. So the likelihood of Peter surviving that prison sentence was not very high. The next morning, he could have been taken to his death. And these people were praying desperately, earnestly in prayer. You know, I was in a prayer meeting once in Worthing, and a lady stood up and said, I want to pray for my husband. He's not a believer. And she started to cry, literally cry out in prayer. And many of us decided we would start to pray for that man as well. Within 2 years, that man became a believer. And they left the church and went somewhere else. And he started to do God's work. Don't know what's happened to him now. But that woman prayed desperate prayers. And I believe these people were praying desperately. But they didn't get the answer that they thought they were going to get. They didn't expect Peter to arrive. They perhaps thought Peter might be spared his life. But to actually in the prayer meeting, someone said, God got Peter out of a jail, but Peter couldn't get himself into a prayer meeting. Were they not praying in faith? I don't know. Does that encourage you? You don't have to pray in faith, actually. God can still do it. Hudson Taylor said, I don't have great faith, but I have faith in a great God. Have you ever prayed for something which you didn't actually expect to happen and it happened? It's not your believing faith, is it? It's not the prayer that James O'Fraser prayed, but this prayer is slightly different. They were praying in desperation and God answered anyway. That is great, isn't it? That encourages me to pray even though we don't always have the faith that God's going to do something. Now, Graham said to me as I walked in the room, this is my last story, how is Joseph getting on? And I said, I'll save it to my story, Graham. So Joseph, as you recall, some of you, he had problems with migraines. He had real problems with migraines. Since the age of about 3 or 4, he had 5 migraines a week, which was 5 days out of 7. He'd have a migraine. So bad that he would have to lie down. Now, when he came to school at Cornerstone, every Wednesday, he spent most of his time in the office, didn't he, Graham? With Sarah Lumley. I don't know what they were doing in there, but he was normally taking his medication and asleep, and then you'd come out and play games, and then sometimes you'd end up back in there again. He was disabled, really, with it. He had hemiplegic migraine, so he couldn't walk sometimes. We took him up to Great Ormond Street. He was under the care of Great Ormond Street, and sometimes he wouldn't even be able to walk out the hospital properly. His migraine would kick in, and he couldn't move his legs. And one time he was stuck on an underground station because of that, because he couldn't move. He was in a really bad way. He tried the hospital tried every medication. Some of it made him anxious, some of it made him hungry, some of it made him drowsy. None of it worked. They tried an injection through the back of his neck. It did not work. In the end, they decided they would try an experiment. They had a magnetic device which would go around the back of his neck and then fire magnetic impulses into his neck. Only ever been used on adults, never on children. But Joseph said he was prepared to go for it. It was quite safe, but a bit unusual. He brought it to school, I think, a few times. He put the magnetic device around him. It would fire magnetic impulses. And you know what? It started to improve. He went down from 5 days a week, sometimes 3, sometimes even 2. And we thought, a miracle. Isn't it wonderful? But then what happened? We decided to go to Thailand. We went to the hospital. Can we take this machine with us? They said, no, you can't. It has to stay in this country. We can't service it when it's overseas. It's worth £3,000 and we're not letting you take it. And we thought, no, what have we done? We're thinking of taking our child to Thailand. And it's the worst place in the world to go to because you're going to get dehydrated. That would bring on a migraine. You're going to get really hot in the sun. That's going to bring on a migraine. You're going to have too much excitement at times. That brings on a migraine. And we thought, no, this is a mistake. So we got the church to pray. But you know what? We didn't really expect anything to happen. We didn't really expect anything to happen. I always thought I would have a disabled son, to be fair. I really did. But God moved on him. We got loads of people to pray. One couple said, we're going to pray for him in the church in Worthing until his migraine stopped. And I thought, oh, that's a hard prayer. You've got to do that for life. But they did. They prayed for him daily. And when we got to Thailand, do you know what happened? Within months, in Thailand, Joseph's migraines almost disappeared. And now he is at university doing acting course. And he probably has less migraines than the rest of the other kids. A lot of the kids suffer from migraines in our family. He probably has less migraines now than the others do. And that is an answer to prayer. Not because of our prayers, but because of God's mercy. And I think there's a lot of that as well. God's mercy and his love. Not all about us. It's about him, isn't it? It's all about God. But he wants us to pray. He wants us to keep praying. Let's finish off this story. Meanwhile, Peter kept knocking. When they finally opened the door and saw him, they were amazed. He motioned for them to quiet down and told them how the Lord had led him out of prison. Tell James and the other brothers what happened, he said. And then he went to another place. At dawn, there was a great commotion among the soldiers about what had happened to Peter. What a fantastic story, isn't it? Let me finish with a quote, please, from Patrick Johnson, who wrote Operation World. This is what he said. Patrick Johnson said, it's a mystery that our loving Heavenly Father has somehow limited his omnipotence to partner with his redeemed people so that his actions in the world are inextricably linked with our prayers. Can I read that to you again? It's a mystery that our loving Heavenly Father has somehow limited his omnipotence, his power, to partner with his redeemed people, that's us, so that his actions in the world are inextricably linked with our prayers. Now, I didn't have time this morning to mention Prue's book. It was about Albania. I was going to mention how people prayed from Albania, and it went from 0 Christians in 1990 to 1 million Christians today. Some of them are not evangelical, but that's a huge prayer makes all the difference. And we'd encourage you. True's selling a book today. Got a new one out. It's come out. There's 3 in the series. This is series 1. But you can see how God answers prayer in these books. 20 mission topics, 20 countries. And it's a great way of getting people to pray in families, or if you've got children, to pass them on to your children or grandchildren. I used to read to my kids before they went to sleep at night, these books. But that's an aside. But another miracle of prayer changes things. And I leave you with that this morning. And sorry, it's a bit rough. You kept up with me. Well done. But can I just leave you with the word prayer makes things happen? Amen. Thank you.